You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
I'm really looking forward to bringing you today's second house call of the weekend. We answered some amazing questions yesterday. If you didn't tune into that show, all you have to do is go back, stephencabral.com/554 for that show and show notes. Of course, you can find it on iTunes and a lot of other podcast streams as well. So we answered a lot of wellness, weight loss, and anti-aging questions on that show. Remember, these are our community questions that we get each and every week. Coming in, we're usually just about a couple weeks behind in getting to your question, but we absolutely will get to it. So again, without further ado, I'd love to get right into today's questions, not waste any of your time. And the first question today is from Joanie. Joanie writes in, I love listening to your podcast and I've learned so much from you. Thanks for all you do getting this information out, especially for free. I've been dealing with hip bursitis for the past 8 months. It's worse when I go from sitting to standing. I've always been active and enjoyed running, not long distance running, but any high impact now I do is painful. I've had x-rays, been a chiropractors, orthopedic surgeons, and had hip injection, which only helped for a couple weeks. I was wondering if I should get another injection. I'm very healthy, no grains, no dairy, eat lots of veggies, fruits, lean protein. I've been doing stretches, yoga, walking, etc., but nothing seems to make it go away. Any information you can give would be great. Thanks so much. Okay, Joanie, a couple things right off the bat that we have to get to. So, let's talk about what is bursitis for the people who don't know what bursitis is. Well, bursitis can actually be in all sorts of different joints in the body, but when it's in the hip, it's actually called trochanteric bursitis. So the trochanter, or the trochanter area of the hip, has a sac there that can fill with fluid. Now, the bursa there is to prevent friction and the bone on bone, but it can actually get inflamed. And when it gets swollen or it fills with fluid, we can start to get that inflammatory based issue. So this typically comes from an injury. We get hit in the hip, or it can come from overuse, like running or like something like that. Now, it can also come with arthritis. It can come with bone spurs. So just make sure you're getting clear that you don't have arthritis, that you don't have degeneration of the hip, because people have degeneration of the hip can also get this bursitis as well. Eventually, that does lead to hip replacement surgery. Now, the nice thing about hip replacement surgery, it can be staved off for many, many years by following an anti-inflammatory diet, by reducing things that are inflammatory for you, and by laying off the high impact work, such as the long distance running or any type of hard impact as well. So one other thing just comes to mind is I would just want to make sure some people don't deal well with nightshades. I've done a previous podcast on nightshades, but essentially you could look them up as well. It is tomatoes and peppers and eggplant and goji berries and some herbs. And these things for some people actually cause inflammation. Very, very small percentage of the population, but it does. It infects some people. And of course, I'm one of those lucky people that if I eat too many nightshades, I get inflammation myself in my joints. I know, lucky me, but that's okay. It's just one of those things. I just avoid peppers and eggplant and those types of things in general. Again, I can have them every once in a while because I've really done a great job at cleaning up my body. So I could eat anything, literally anything in the world once in a while, and it's not going to hurt me at all because I've essentially lowered my threshold to all of this inflammation. So how do we help you though? Well, the first thing that we need to do and we need to look at is allowing the body a time to rest. So keep working your upper body, keep doing those specific types of exercises. Don't stay in that compressed seated position for too long. Or if you do, try to sit on a little bit of a pad, an AirX pad, some type of cushion pad. Next, I want you to make sure that you stretch your hamstrings. I want to make sure you stretch your hip flexors, your adductors, your IT band. If you don't know what those are, play back the podcast, simply type them in. You'll be able to see all sorts of different stretches for those, but also look back to my foam rolling video. I did a video, and again, go back to the podcast, just type in foam rolling or type in myoball, and you'll actually get to see the YouTube video I did from like a decade ago where I was demonstrating how to roll out those tight muscles. You can actually get bursa-based inflammation in the hip when your body and your hips aren't in proper alignments. And they're not going to get in proper alignment until you roll out, you iron out the fascia in those tight muscles, and then you stretch the muscles to allow the hip to get back into alignment. So that's absolutely what I do recommend. In the short term, I also recommend hot and cold-based treatments. So I recommend cold packs on the hip or an icy bath, cold bath, come out of the bath, towel off quick, put on a heat pack, do that for about 5 minutes or so, get back in the cold bath for 5 minutes or so, and alternate that for anywhere between 3 and 5 rounds. That can help as well. So this will get you started. Hopefully that helps. And again, also tune back to a previous podcast I did on anti-inflammatory based herbal products. I'm going to do my best right now to actually make a note to do a link in today's podcast for our natural anti-inflammatories. So I hope that helps as well. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Rebecca is writing in saying, hello, I recently had blood work and found that my white blood cell, hemoglobin, hematocrit, and platelet count were all on the low end. All but the platelet count were only low by 0.5 or less. My platelet count was 111 nanograms per milliliter. This is the first time I've seen these issues before. I'm just wondering what it could be. My naturopath said it could be immune stress, and my GI said I should see a hematologist. Ferritin is 9 nanograms per milliliter, and vitamin D is 35, which I know is not ideal, but it's gone up remarkably from 13 nanograms per milliliter. This increase in vitamin D is 2 weeks on your daily nutritional support powder. Pretty healthy 27-year-old female. The only known issues are upper GI-based, reflux, indigestion, bloating, abdominal pain from time to time, but I'm taking your healthy belly for that, as I suspect it's H. pylori after an encounter with food poisoning. So where should I begin, and what is immune stress? Okay, so let's go over this right now. And your first question, what is basically immune stress? And, you know, the funny thing about immune stress is that it's just so broad of a term. Immune stress is any time your body encounters something it sees as foreign. So it could be a virus. It could be something atopic that you touch or that touches you. It could be a bacteria. It could be an actual healthy food, but that you have a food sensitivity to. So if you're eating a food such as eggs or one of those things that we might consider healthy, and you're eating it and you have an immune reaction, that will actually cause inflammation in your gut as well. So that's really important to look at. It could be candida overgrowth, bacterial overgrowth. It could be H. pylori. It could be heavy metals. But as you can see, immune stress is very, very vague. It could just be high nervous system, meaning like fight or flight. So I would always say, okay, well, if it's immune stress, why do you have immune stress? And you look towards that. So you gave me a little bit of, insight as to what's going on. And so I just want to give you my input as well. And just, let you know, if your ferritin is on the lower side, we do have to look towards iron-based anemia. That's important to look at. But when we're looking at the hematocrit and others being low, you want to understand that it could be, this just all could be iron, right? It could be iron. But a lot of times it's also B12 and it's folate. And it can also be vitamin C or B6 based. I think that's important to say because here's the thing. Your red blood cells need all of those nutrients, not just iron for proper oxygenation. Really, really important. Now, when I do this detective work, because that's really what it is, and I say, okay, well, someone's lower on all of these things and they're telling me they have gut-based issues. I'm saying, well, this person might not be producing enough stomach acid, might not have a strong enough digestive system. They're not breaking down their good quality food well enough. So they're not able to extract the B vitamins that they need, the vitamin C, the iron from spinach and pumpkin seeds, and if they choose to eat, meats, they can get it from that as well. So that's what I'm looking at. And where do you start? Well, where you start is an organic acids test and or a stool test. So the stool test is going to be for H. pylori and parasites, and the organic acids test is going to be for basically leaky gut intestinal permeability, looking at candida, yeast, fungus, C. diff, Clostridium difficile, immune stress from looking at all of your vitamins. So that will look at that. We'll look at your B vitamins, your vitamin C. That's my place to start. That's what I would recommend. If I could only pick one, it would be the organic acids test. If I could pick two, then it would be the stool test as well. If not, you're already doing great. You're using the daily nutritional support powder, which of course is what I recommend. I'd recommend if you could do the whole Dr. Cabral daily protocol, do that. That's the greens powder, the daily nutritional support powder, and the probiotic. So it's literally every vitamin you need, mineral you need, antioxidant, 15 grams vegan protein, 22 organic fruits and vegetables. That does include some natural iron. Then it's 50 billion CFU of good probiotics. So it's literally everything you need for under $5 a day. It's what I do myself. Can't recommend that enough for almost every human alive. Okay, so that's what I recommend. Go with that. Do that. Again, that's my recommendation. Then I would say rerun those blood labs in about 8 weeks or so to 12 weeks. That's what I would do. Okay. Galena is up next, and Galena writes in, my husband, who is 25 years old and otherwise in good health, was just diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Every doctor asked us if he had any illness recently or stress. He didn't in fact, have a very stressful period in his life, about 3 to 6 months prior to diagnosis. I understand it's an autoimmune disorder, and everyone everywhere says it's not reversible. My question is if it's not possible to reverse type 1 diabetes and regrow new pancreas. Is it possible to reverse autoimmune mechanism to stop his body from attacking itself, get rid of antibodies? If so, how? Okay, well, I'm happy to answer this for you. Probably not a 5-minute answer on our Cabral house call, but I'm going to get you started. I'm going to help out your husband and you so that nothing further happens as well in terms of health. That's what we want to look at as well right now. Okay, so this is actually good timing with this question. There is brand new research that it may be possible to reverse type 1 diabetes. I don't want to get hopes up right now. Now, type 2 diabetes, it's very easily reversed. There's no doubt about that through essentially the protocols that I use. Again, I didn't invent any of these. I'm not taking credit for that, but it's using a low inflammatory based nutrition plan. It's using periods of fasting. It is using detoxification based protocols, leveling back out blood sugar levels, exercising to uptake glucose. Again, very, 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 very reversible. Now, type 1 diabetes, formerly thought to be completely irreversible because what's happened is damage to the beta cells in the pancreas have been destroyed. Well, what they're showing is that they may not be completely destroyed. They may have been turned off. And not for everyone, but for some people. So this is only in mice studies right now. They're showing that it's called a fasting mimicking diet. You're welcome to look that up, and I would suggest you look it up since we can't go through it today in the whole podcast. But it's called a fasting mimicking diet. So remember, my job is to read all of the research for you, and then you ask the questions, and I'm happy to give you that first place to start. A fasting mimicking diet right now, again, not homemade yet, not out to the public yet. But what it looks at is this. Periods of fasting to allow for that decrease in autoimmune response, a leveling back out of what's called cytokines or immune-based suppression of some parts of the immune system and over-exaggeration of other parts of the immune system, may be able to turn it back on. And it has in mice. That's very important because that's the first step. And then we can look at using it with humans. Now, for now, though, you're on the right track. How do we make sure that this autoimmune tendency doesn't attack another part of the body? Because again, like that tendency may be still there. We have to look at, you are absolutely right to know as well that stress is oftentimes a catalyst for this autoimmune or cancer-based causation or reaction. So, of course, we have to decrease the stress, no doubt about that. We need to make sure, though, that we're not on just a super low-carb diet, that we're still also getting high antioxidant fruits and vegetables in the diet. We're going to go with more like berries and lower glycemic foods for your husband, especially as he's getting used to using insulin and keeping his blood sugar regulated in that way. And what I'm also recommending is making sure that he's getting a good, I would say 5 to 10 grams minimum per meal of fiber to make sure he's helping regulate those blood sugar levels. Okay, up next, we need enough vitamin C, zinc. We can use certain types of immune regulators like beta glucans to help with the immune system. But again, I don't have enough data to be able to give you specifics. Again, that's not what the house calls are really about, but you can absolutely level out the playing field. And when we're looking at type 1 diabetes, maybe being a little bit more Th1 dominant, we can also use things to help bring it back to alignment, doing food sensitivity tests, looking at fungal and yeast overgrowth with an organic acids test, looking at a hair tissue mineral analysis for heavy metals such as mercury, aluminum. Those are have been shown to cause autoimmune-based issues as well. So I'm hoping, Galina, that gave you a good place to start to help to rebalance your husband's body, which at 25 years old, he can absolutely do. All right, Heather's up next. Hi, Dr. Cabral. I'm wondering what test you would recommend I start with. I'm a 29-year-old female. I live a pretty healthy lifestyle. I was 22, diagnosed with thyroiditis, eventually resolved on its own with no medication. Ever since then, I've felt my body has changed. A year after I started to develop strange problem with multiple times a month where I'd wake up in the morning, my eyes were severely swollen shut as if I had an allergic reaction. For the past 5 years or so, I've been finding answers, with doctors being completely stumped. Some suggested a food allergy, others suggested idiopathic angioedema, and recently had my thyroid checked again with blood work. I feel it's related to my hormones. I used to take my birth control pill every night before bed. I decided 4 years ago to stop taking birth control pills to see if I would get any relief. It helped tremendously, and now I only have minimal swelling once a month, always a week before my period. On a side note, I'm always extremely tired, and I can't seem to figure out why. I get a minimum 7 hours of sleep a night, never feel rested upon waking, and always crash around 3 p.m. and need to take a nap. If I don't set an alarm, I could easily sleep 12 hours. Do you think the tiredness is related to whatever else is occurring? Thank you for all you do. I truly appreciate it and enjoy listening to your daily podcast every morning on my way to work. Heather, thank you so much too. Really appreciate your listens every morning. It means a lot to me, really. Like, as I'm looking at the podcast and I see all the different people who tune in, that gives me the energy to do this every single day. I love it, and I'm really happy that it's meant something to you in any way. So here's the thing. Without a doubt, we need to run what's called a weight maintenance plan. Again, I hate the name of that. I'm going to try to change as best I can, but it's just called a weight maintenance plan. Now, what it is, though, it's adrenal testing, looks at your cortisol levels, DHEA, progesterone, estrogen, testosterone. You're going to run this lab about 5 days before you get your period, day one of menstruation. The reason you're doing that, that's your worst times, basically. That's that's the time when you might get the swelling. And I do agree with you that it can be hormone based. Now, here we have to keep going deeper though. On part of that weight maintenance test, it's also going to look at your thyroid from a much deeper perspective. Forget the TSH. It's fine, but it should be between 0.5 and 2, 2.5 up to 3 maximum. But again, forget about that. I want to know what's your T3, what's your free T4. I need to look at that. What are your TPO? My opinion is this. If you're running one test, that's the test. We're going to link that up in the show notes for you today. So all you have to do is go to StephenCabral.com/555, all fives, 555. You can check out the show notes today there. Absolutely what I recommend. You need to get to the bottom of this. You're on the right track. Without a doubt, there's just some hormonal balance. And again, I can't guess at that. I can, but I won't. And because we both know that you're doing a lot of the detective work just like I would ask you, when does it happen the most? Is it after this? If it's always 1 week before your period, we have to assume, again, I'm giving you my educated guess from having done this many, many times, that it's some form of estrogen dominance that also, yes, might be affecting your thyroid during that time as well. Now, could it then allow for, though, more histamine-based issues that could cause those eyes to swell shut? Yeah, that's possible. So also look at high histamine-based foods, mastocytosis, things like that I've spoken about in the past, where if you get a depression of cortisol, you might not be able to suppress that inflammation as well either, or a lowering of norepinephrine. I could go on and on about this because I dealt with it for many years, but that's a good place to start. Again, high histamine foods would be smoked foods, wine, cheese, like aged. Anything aged really is going to fall into that high histamine. Anything fermented, from even the fermented veggies and yogurts, those types of things, all that would be higher in histamines as well. Check that out. run that weight loss test. Can't recommend it enough. You'll get my personal recommendations. I will actually read it over, and then you get a 30-minute call with one of my great health coaches who are absolutely amazing, and they'll give you all the details as well. Okay, Anonymous is up next. Looks like Anonymous will be our last question of the day. Let's see what they're writing in. I'm a married mother of 3 lovely boys, 49 years old, overweight, menopausal, and working 40 to 50 hours of a night shift a week as a flight nurse. Life is busy, rewarding, fun, and stressful. Have just found your podcast and loving all the wisdom, information, and realness. So as well as fighting the weight, fatigue, and hormones, I've been living with HIV for 20 years. I have been on and off meds throughout that time, depending on the wisdom and practice of my ID doctor. I have been sick and maintained CD4 of greater than 900 and undetectable copies. Currently on a deficit, I have not heard of that drug before, so I'll look that up, with no obvious side effects. But I worry about the toxicity. In another life, naturopathy as a career would have been my thing. I love your insight on functional medicine, role in HIV care. Appreciate it. Thank you. So I actually work with a fair amount of HIV positive wellness clients in Boston. And Boston, you may not know this, is home to one of the largest HIV clinics in the entire world, and it's called Fenway Health or Fenway Healthcare. They were one of the originators, and they were the ones, now I don't know if they actually came up with it, but they're one of the ones who at least first implemented the trial on a drug that essentially is I want to say a vaccination against getting HIV. And they were one of those, again, originators of it. I'm not going to give you my stance on vaccines today, but I want you to know that what they used it for was for at-risk populations, and they actually used it, again, for prostitutes who are at risk. And I can't say just prostitutes, I shouldn't say that, but that is one of the main groups. And people who were just very high at risk, and they weren't going to be using protection. They had to say, well, there might be side effects to this vaccine, but the side effects might not be as bad as getting HIV. Now, again, this is a very serious virus that we do want to look at. Now, it's been looked at quite a bit in naturopathic medicine. And there are a lot of people who do feel that it can be reversed or at least put dormant or however you want to call it. Now, you can do that with drugs. I understand that. And I always tell this to people. My job is to support you in any way I can. And I believe I'm one of the most integrative, doesn't mean best or anything like that, just means integrative. I'm willing to look at anything because my job is to care for people. That's it. And if sometimes then the best option for them is a drug, I would never prescribe that. I would never recommend that. But there's a time and a place. If you have a staph infection in your blood, probably an antibiotic is going to be a good choice. If you're 70 years old with bilateral pneumonia, I hope that you're going to the emergency room, you're getting the care that you need. You're having a heart attack, I hope that you're going to the emergency room and getting acute care. Remember, there's a time and a place for everything. So I can't give you a whole protocol on what to do if you do have HIV, but what I would like to do is give you a few places to start because it is important that we do keep the immune system balanced. Okay, so one of the things that I do when we need to really destroy viruses is I look at things that I know works against viruses. I know colloidal silver works. I know oregano oil works. I know berberine works. I know olive leaf works. Now, there are combination products that contain all of those herbs I just spoke about. They usually contain grapefruit seed extract as well. They won't contain the colloidal silver. That is something you could choose to use or not use, but also L-lysine. L-lysine about 3 grams per day. 3,000 milligrams or 3 grams per day. So all of those things can work great. But I'm also recommending, again, this is important to look at as well, higher dosages of vitamin C, higher dosages of zinc. Really, really important. You can do nanoparticle zinc or you can just do regular zinc. Smoothies, without a doubt, greens powders, making sure the gut is healed. You have to keep in mind, if you have candida overgrowth, if you have bacterial overgrowth, And your immune system's always on because it's fighting all of the proteins and different bacteria or yeast that might be coming through that intestine, the small intestine, large intestine. That's going to exacerbate conditions. So my recommendation is run an organic acids test or do something to make sure that that gut is sealed up properly. If not, you can just use something like healthy gut support. But now I always want to give people real actionable information as well. And I'd be remiss if I didn't share this with you. Please don't take it as what we call a cure, because I am not even allowed to use that word. Believe it or not, the only people who can say the word cure are licensed medical doctors, according to the American Medical Association, which of course is a privately owned company, which of course has lobbyists, which of course have bought the government. But that's a different story for another day. So here's the thing. In August of last year, in the African Journal of Traditional, Complementary, and Alternative Medicine, there was actually a researched case study that showed this specific herb as actually curing HIV patients naturally. It's called black seed extract. Okay? Black seed is something that you can get naturally. This is very, very important to look into. Again, I can't give you the specific prescribed dosage or anything like that. I'm not even legally allowed to do that. But I can tell you this. We know in natural medicine the things that I mentioned: olive leaf, oregano oil, berberine. There are a lot of great products out there like that. Colloidal silver, high levels of vitamin C, 30 milligrams to 50 milligrams of zinc per day, keeping the nutrition strong. You can use things like echinacea for a small period of time, things like that as well. L-lysine, and this thing called black seed. Without a doubt, these things can absolutely help. I would be very interested, if I were you, in looking into those specific things. I'm happy to answer more specific questions on this. I just want you to know that from a ethical as well as legal perspective, if you and I aren't working together from a one-on-one capacity, because I don't know your background, I don't know all these different things going on, except that you sound like an amazing woman who's doing so much for her family, her kids, working hard, and also dealing with her own wellness-based issue. So I wish you the best. I know that you're going to continue to fight this and do well. And as we know, with so many people out there right now, HIV now is something that never has to hold you back from anything in life. And really, it can be untraceable in the blood as if it doesn't exist. So hopefully that answers your question today. Hopefully I was able to give everyone the questions, or at least the place to start that they were looking for. I should say the answers. And really, again, always appreciate each and every one of your listens. Do hope that you tune back in tomorrow for our Motivation and Mindset Monday. We're going to be answering more of all of your questions again over the course of the week, but also, of course, on our weekend HouseCall editions. Take care, everyone. Did you know that the body really only becomes sick or imbalanced in only two ways? Over time, you become deficient in vital nutrients, and you also accumulate toxins internally and from the environment. As those nutrients diminish and you increase your total toxic load, your body then begins to show the first signs of dis-ease. It's actually quite predictable, and the good news is that if we know how you began to fill up that proverbial rain barrel, we also know how to empty it to begin the healing process. I was fortunate enough to learn this ancient healing process from my mentor after suffering from debilitating diseases for close to a decade. It was only when I began to implement these techniques did I finally overcome my illnesses and go on to live a life of energy and vitality that I now enjoy. I'd like to share with you now what I discovered after traveling all over the world and how to combine the best of ancient healing wisdom with state-of-the-art science. Allow me to teach you exactly how I've been able to help over 250,000 people to empty their rain barrel and begin to transform their body and lives into what they've always hoped they could be. To get your copy of the international bestseller, The Rain Barrel Effect, simply go to stephencabral.com/rainbarrel.